In this video, you hear the story of Jo Moore. She's an illustrator based in Brighton, and she has been for 31 years, so she's done a lot. She started in the editorial industry, then moved to the publishing industry, mostly doing non-fiction books. And she's also worked for several years on a BBC-produced show called The Dumping Ground. And most recently, she decided to take all of that and leave it behind, leaving her comfort zone and completely reinventing herself. If you're interested, you'll be able to find all of these episodes, timestamps, and resources, as well as my free guide to full-time freelancing in the description below. Let's begin. Jo, thank you so much for coming to the show.
You're very welcome.
So, how about you start by telling us something about you, just a brief summary of your life and what you're doing right now?
Okay, well, I've been an illustrator for 31 years. I went to what was then Brighton Polytechnic and is now at University of Brighton, and I graduated in '88. And then I did postgraduate at Central St Martin's part-time for 2 years. And as soon as I graduated, I started working as a freelance illustrator. And I have been a freelance illustrator for 31 years, and we can talk a bit more about the things and the clients I've had and the work I've done. And alongside being mainly a freelance illustrator, I've also been a visiting lecturer at various art colleges, and I ran the Brighton Illustrators group, which was a group supporting freelance illustrators in Brighton. And that lasted for 30 years. And I'm still class myself as an illustrator, but more recently I've taken a slightly different direction. So that's where we are at the moment. So I have a lot of experience of being an illustrator, but I think there's some interesting questions about sustaining that over a long time and what you do to try and keep things fresh for yourself, and whether you keep going down the same route or you diversify, which I think is, having seen a lot of friends, I think the diversification and the expansion and moving into other areas is very prevalent at the moment.
Okay, great. So we've got the cliffhanger about what is she doing now. But let's start from the beginning, let's say, and let's talk about how you started with illustration and go on from there.
How I started once I decided I was going to be an illustrator when I left college from that point, or why I ended up being an illustrator in the first place, or is that an interesting...
I'd say your first approach to illustration and how...
I think when you're growing up, painting and drawing is something that every kid does, and everybody just takes it for granted. And then they often reach an age where they become incredibly self-conscious about it, or somebody doesn't like a picture and tells them they can't draw. And I think many creative industries or practices are often not valued as much as they should be. So I never really knew about art colleges, and I was at school and I was going to be an interpreter and translator. And then these 3 students came in from Brighton Polytechnic, which was along the coast from where I was at school, and they came in with their portfolios and showed what first or second year degree students were working on. And after they'd visited, everybody else in the class, the art class, was totally amazed. I was like, oh my God, I could never be that, but that was amazing. And I looked at it and I thought, well, I know I'm nowhere near that good now, but God, maybe if I work really, really hard, maybe one day I could be an illustrator. So that was the fork in the road where I didn't become an interpreter translator. And I suddenly decided I was going to go to this place called Art College. And every year at school, when you have a careers interview, you meet the careers officer, and they don't really have much about art colleges. And they just say, it's very competitive, it's very hard to get in. And you go, yes, I do know, yes, no, I'm going to work hard, yes, I know. And every year you'd have the same conversation. But I was just determined, and I worked, and I think this is the thing. Isn't it the 10,000 hour rule about learning an instrument, learning to do something? I don't know that there's any shortcuts. I think you actually just have to put the time in getting better at doing what you want to do, whatever it is. So fast forward, and yes, I did get to Brighton, and it was quite evident that I very probably would do illustration or design or some design-based practice rather than fine art or textiles. That wasn't really very evident in the work I was doing. So I did my foundation course at Brighton and then applied to Brighton Polytechnic, even though it was on the doorstep and often they kind of want you to apply somewhere else. I just thought, no, it's one of the best in the country. I really want to go there. So I did my degree at Brighton, which was a great experience. Suddenly, you're mixing with other people that all want to do the same thing as you. Suddenly, you're exposed to so many briefs and ideas and ways of thinking. And I think a really good art college isn't teaching you technical skill. It's teaching you how to think conceptually, how to think creatively, and all of that just really sets you up, I think, to be an illustrator. And from then, I felt at the end of my degree I wasn't quite ready to go out in the big wide world and start being an illustrator. And I went to Central St Martin's on a part-time higher diploma. And that, for me, was very useful because it had, being the centre of London, it was on Longacre, just around the corner from Covent Garden. And we had some live clients come in and set briefs while we were students. So at the time, the body shop was a really big deal, and they used to do some very, very creative promotional work and publicity using a lot of illustrators. And they came in and set a brief, and one of the students on my course, did all their windows for the next campaign.
Yeah, but Jenny Maisels, which we've had on the podcast already, she's done some of that as well.
You're right. So I think because Jenny was at St Martin's as well. So I think that was a very different experience to Brighton because it allowed you to suddenly take one step towards the professional market and to experience what a live brief might be. So when I was at St Martin's, I was in my final year getting ready for my show, and the art editor of Elle magazine, the fashion magazine, was just around the corner, and she came in and had a look at a few folios, and then the head of department, the course leader, called me in the next day and said, "Oh, Debbie wants you to go around with your folio again." And I went, "Right." And I trotted round the corner with my folio, quaking, thinking, "I haven't really got a folio. I've got some illustrations. I've done these." And she just looked at them and said, "Oh, yes, will you do this article?" And handed me an article. And I thought, "Oh, my God, piece of paper is my first job." And it was to illustrate a very exciting article about holiday insurance. But I think that's a very good lesson because illustrators can often be used to illustrate subjects that A, are a bit boring, or B, are conceptually tricky or not that easy. So often illustrators can, particularly editorial subjects, they can be used really effectively to bring a subject to life or to explain a concept, a difficult concept in very clear visual terms. So and I was at home painting, and suddenly everything was really difficult. But yes, that was my first paid illustration job with Elle. And so that's where I got my first job. Then I graduated, and at the time, 30 years ago, you did used to physically go around with a portfolio in your hand. You would sit down with a list of phone numbers, used to find the clients from either just researching in a good bookshop or a magazine shop and finding who the art editor was, and literally pen and paper, writing it out. Or you could buy a book called Writers and Artists Yearbook, which would list all the art directors. And you would sit there on the phone all day at home trying to get an appointment to go in with a portfolio.
So is that what you've done after your work with Elle?
Yes, I did one off job with Elle, and then I did have my portfolio, and I just everybody else would pick up the phone and try and ring around all the different magazines or publishers. And you would go in with a portfolio and you would show it to the art director, and you would leave something with them, a postcard or a printed sheet of your, this is totally pre-digital days. When I was a student, we had one computer in the building next door, which in the third year, we were all taken to look at the computer. We weren't allowed to do anything on it. So, yes.
From afar.
So we had to watch someone else doing something on the computer.
Oh, yeah.
And at Central St Martin's on the postgrad, they did actually have a suite of early Macs, which we had a couple of days drawing. But so everything was longhand, everything was ringing up, taking a physical portfolio, leaving a physical sample, usually a postcard or something like that. And then you would hope that they would like what they saw, and somewhere down the line they would ring you back.
So did you already know what you wanted to work on, whether it was magazines or books?
I think through particularly the course, the postgrad at Central St Martin's, I thought my work could be suitable for editorial. And editorial is a really good thing to cut your teeth on because it's a very quick turnaround. You might have to do an illustration every week. The subjects are usually very varied, and so it pushes you to draw a lot of things. And frankly, it's a good bit of money dropping in every week, every month. It's quite a good thing. So I did have a folio that was quite geared towards editorial, and not long after I left college, I did start working quite regularly on a number of magazines. There was a women's magazine called Red, and A New Woman, and titles like Mother and Baby, all magazines like that came out very regularly. And so if you think you might have something in that month, or it was good sort of ticking over money.
And have you got in touch with all of those clients in the same way? Have you just contacted them yourself, or have those clients come from the previous jobs or recommendations?
Quite often, because the big publishing houses, like IPC magazines, there used to be a huge tower in London, and they might have 35, 40 magazines in there. But each magazine would have its own art department. This is at the time. So each magazine would have their art director, their editors, their art editors. So you had to contact them separately. And so sometimes you could go in with your portfolio and know that you had an appointment with someone at this magazine up on the 10th floor, and then you'd have to kill half an hour because you had to go one floor down and have an appointment. If you were lucky, you could get them lined up nicely. Otherwise, you were just dashing around London on the tube with your portfolio and then diving into a coffee shop to kill an hour between appointments. But that has totally, totally changed. I don't know that it's very common that you would actually go, firstly, that you would be able to get through to the art director. Secondly, that you would walk in with a portfolio and even have 10 minutes to show it, because sometimes it was literally that quick. There would just be open the folio, flick, 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 flick. Thank you very much. Have you got a card? Here it is. Hope I hear from you. Goodbye. And you're out the door before you even had time to sit down. So I think that is a really fundamental shift about how you might contact people. And everything's online now. You can find out who art editors are or art directors are.
So you said that you don't think it's very straightforward now to get in touch with the art director. So do you feel like you need an agent to get you through? Is that how it's changed?
I really do feel that's probably the case more than it was before. It's very strange because in some respects, all the digital access that everybody has in a way made it much more democratic and opened it up. But in other ways, I do feel that it is harder to get to see the person you might want to see. And that's also probably from their point of view, because there are a lot more people trying to contact them. I think I can understand why they don't have 10 minutes to see 10 people. That would, they're very busy people, but I think that is a hurdle. I think it's a real hurdle. And an agent, whether it's an illustration agent or, if you want to do books, a literary agent, I think they are the key holders. I think they're the ones that can open the door and get you into the room, possibly. That's my impression.
Or are you working with an agent currently?
I have never worked with an agent, but over 31 years, there have been, let's say, three occasions, a few years apart, where I have actively tried to get an agent. And in fact, I am actively trying to get an agent at the moment. And I have been going through this process myself of researching the agents, researching literary agents, freelance illustration agencies, and sending them samples. So in a way, I've gone full circle because I've been developing new work. So I'm almost gone back to the beginning. I may have 30 years experience, but things have changed so much that I'm erring on the side of thinking that an agent would be helpful. And that's something that seems quite different.
That's so interesting. So you feel like you've tried things, and maybe we'll probably get to these again later in the story, but so you've tried things and you now feel like you haven't been able to see success with those things because you don't have an agent to represent you. Is that what you're saying?
I think for quite a sizable part of my illustration career, I was, inverted commas, successful. I had regular clients. They came back. I was working on series books, and I would know 6 months ahead that I was going to be solid busy. And then I worked for the BBC on a television programme, and so because that grew, I had to stop actively looking for other work because I just didn't have time to do it. So strangely, I got caught up in I achieved the thing that all illustrators want, which is, oh, it would be so good if I had a regular job that I knew was coming every year. Yeah, hey, I had that. But be careful what you wish for, because sometimes it grew and grew and grew, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but it was great until it wasn't great. And the not great bit was I didn't move on, I didn't develop. So in the 7 years when I was working for television, I had very little time to develop my own work. And in those you think back 7, 8, 10 years, the whole thing that has emerged that didn't even exist last time I was freelance illustrator looking for publishing work is social media, Instagram, all these network groups, LinkedIn, all these things like that. They didn't even exist. So I am more or less having to learn all that from scratch in a way.
Okay, so let's go. I didn't want to talk about this too much right now, since we're going to see it again later in the story. So let's go back to where we were. You've done your first job with Elle. You've done more editorial work.
Yes.
Was that straight out of the university?
Yes, I did really, really push hard, and I did start getting some quite regular things, and I was known. I was more of an editorial illustrator than anything else. And then what happened, the next sort of fork in the road was, I think I was showing my work to an art director, and a really lovely lady called Jemima, who I remember vividly, even though it's 30 years ago. She said, oh, I think you should take your work and go and show this lady, because I think your work would be suitable for her. So this lady was running a magazine for BBC, which was a spin-off from a children's programme for toddlers that was called Playdates. And it used to be on, I believe it was on every day. It used to have a tie-in magazine with it. which was aimed at very young children. So it would have colouring in, it would have little puzzles, it would have language things. So I went to see this lady called Alison, who was the art editor, and showed her my folio. And again, she just went, "Oh, do this." And I went, "Okay." And so that was my first paid children's job. So concurrently with doing the adult editorial work, I was also working very regularly with Playdays. And that had a very quick turnover and, again, quite a lot of experience just learning about how to meet deadlines, deliver your artwork, how to send it to them. Because, again, folks, just remember this was a physical piece of artwork this big that had to be put inside your thick cardboard and either taken up in person or Red Star delivered from Brighton Station up to London. Somebody, a courier, would collect. So that was good. So I then had more experience with children's publishing. And because of Playdays, there's a particularly fortunate and lovely thing that happened, which was Playdays was 1 year old. They'd been going for a year. And they had a little birthday party at a toy museum in central London. So they used to have publishing parties quite regularly, and they were rather nice. Anyway, we had this lovely afternoon tea party at the Children's Museum, and you walk in and they cross your name off and they give you a sticker with your name on, and you kind of stand there holding your plate of food and your glass of warm white wine. And I was looking around because when you're an illustrator, you generally work at home on your own mostly. You're thinking, "Oh God, I don't know anybody." And I looked around and I saw this lovely chap sitting on a chair, and I went up to him and I said, "Hello, you must be an illustrator. You're sitting on your own as well." And it was Nick Sharratt, who is a very well-known children's illustrator now. And through Nick, other things came later on. So and somebody in that party took a photograph of all the guests, and so I had somewhat amazing to have this lovely photograph of Nick and I meeting for the first time. We must have been 5 years old, of course, it was 30 years ago. So that was lovely. So so then because I had the Playdays experience, I was then able to approach children's publishers. So I started seeing children's publishers and as well as Editorial. And that was when it shifted more, and I started I think I was doing both alongside each other. So I had the editorial work and I had children's publishing work. And that started off with educational publishing, which is a really huge area. And then often it's textbooks. I think it was a German language book was the first children's book I did. And it's often a very overlooked area. I think everybody knows what children's picture books are. Everybody knows that. Many illustrators or many non-illustrators that want to be illustrators aspire, I want to do a children's book. And fabulous. You may be the best children's book illustrator that hasn't been discovered. But most of my professional work was children's non-fiction, it's sort of like a bit of an ugly sister to the Cinderella of picture books. So non-fiction uses loads of illustration, and it's not, I think it's a bit hidden. So it could be anything from atlases, language books, things to make and do, science books. It could even, so anything like that is classed as non-fiction, and they're very, very illustration heavy. So that is the area that I started to find that I was getting most work in. I did approach a new publisher who were just sort of setting up a fiction picture book list, and I can say I have had a picture book published, but it sank without trace. But really, the thing that I the thing I hadn't seen until I started doing it was that my work was very suited to non-fiction publishing. Somehow I was able to capture quite dull or difficult or non-fiction subjects in a slightly quirky, fun way. And I started getting a lot more work doing that.
Okay, so I feel like this is interesting because you identifying the specific use of your style might be something that might help other people that haven't yet seen that same thing in their personal style. So how did you, what would you say is a good fit for non-fictional? Is it your ability to take kind of abstract concepts and synthesizing those into drawing?
I think it actually appeals to things that I enjoy anyway, which is illustrators are usually experts on things for the 2 weeks that they're drawing them. And then as soon as they're done, it's gone. So I'm actually rather good at things like pub quizzes because I can remember little bits of lots of things. So for me, I do have a personal interest in things like popular science and evolution and things like that. So for me, the research on that, although of course when you're given a book to do, it's already been written, you know, you don't have to do that yourself. So somebody has decided, we're going to do a book about dinosaurs and we're going to do a book about spiders. So they have already done the research, written it, laid it out. So when you as an illustrator get the layout, you know, you fill in the gaps that need filling with the right things. But I think the reason that it suited my style was I draw things that are real. Like I don't draw unicorns and fairies, so I draw real things, but I'm able to draw them for children that makes them look a bit cuddlier or a bit softer. So I think that's why my work ended up being very suitable for subjects like that, because they were still legible, you could understand what was going on in the picture, but they didn't look like very analytical or very cold drawings, and they had a little bit of life to them. So funnily enough, I made a little list. I thought, I'm just going to write down some of the thousands of things I've drawn. And I have drawn everything that alphabet, solar system, working of the internal combustion engine, extinct animals, how a toilet flushes, cars, a description, holidays, cooking recipes, national costume, parts of the body. I've drawn the Queen, I've drawn Barack Obama, I've drawn how to repair a bike. I've drawn Machu Picchu probably 5 times in different books over the years. And first aid. I've drawn an extinct species called Anomalocaris, and I have done maps, hundreds of maps. So it's once you get known. So if you're a map person, then other people come to you to do maps, and this is to do with how you promote yourself. So when you have a website or when you have social media presence, that is your shop. That is your shop front to the world. So if you want to sell apples and pears, you put apples and pears in the window. You don't put cherries in the window. And so when you're developing a portfolio, I think you have to be authentic to yourself and your work, and you shouldn't put anything in the folio that you're going to feel a bit embarrassed about, or something that you're not totally happy with. And also just ask yourself, if you put that out there, are you going to want to do that another 10 times? So for me, I love doing maps. I love doing maps, all the little info you get on, and have little cartoons of things going on there. So you can have a bit of humour, a bit of fun in there. But yeah, so that is what I would say about what you present as your, let's call it style. I'm not totally keen on that word, but so I think you need to understand yourself. You need to try and learn what your strengths are and play to your strengths, and not necessarily, you need to realise that, and that takes a bit of time. But if you really want to be a children's book illustrator, you may have to learn how to do that. It might not be something that comes naturally to you. Many years ago, I had a student, and he was a brilliant cartoonist, and his cartoons were amazing. We could capture a likeness. He had great wit and really sharp in his observation of little things he'd write next to them. And then quite near his degree show, he suddenly decided he wanted to go off and do these serious paintings, oil paintings. And I was like, but let's say...
That's not you.
The metaphor is, you're a fantastic guitarist, and you're suddenly turning up and saying, I want to play the piano. And it's like, well, I think you're better off sticking with the guitar. I'm brilliant at that. But I think sometimes you don't always recognise it in yourself.
And how would you go about that? How would you suggest people research themselves in order to find what they're all about?
I think this is one of the hardest things. I think, for having been visiting lecture for years, students striving for their style, their language, their vocabulary is one of the hardest things. And it's never a pressure that's put on them from the teaching end of things. We would prefer that it happens naturally. I think if you really are starting out and you're coming from, you haven't really got a style anything, I think I would always say you've got to start with basics. So just draw and photograph and record things and collect things, whether it's in sketchbooks or scrapbooks. Start really looking and start developing your own taste. And you can keep a scrapbook just of bits of illustration, whether you've seen it online or whether you've cut something out of a magazine or you've seen a piece of gift wrap that you really like. It doesn't matter where it comes from, but you need to start to learn what appeals to you and start to understand whether, are you about colour and pattern? Are you about scale in work? Are you about linear work? Start finding out what really appeals to you. You need to draw and you need to feed your imagination. I think it's the you're going, right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do something amazing with the same piece of paper. And you sit there, you've got to feed it. It's a bit like the old sourdough thing. You can't just leave that sourdough starter sitting in the fridge for 6 months and then expect to cook an amazing loaf with it. You've got to feed that starter to make it grow. And I think you should try and be a bit experimental. So if you're not familiar with different ways of working, do you like drawing with pencil or fine lines? Or do you just like a great big pot of ink and a brush? Or do you work in Procreate on an iPad? Or it doesn't matter. I think the technique that you will eventually hone is almost secondary. I think it's more important to think about themes. So start noticing, where is illustration used? We were saying editorial is often a good place to start because you can cut an article out of a magazine or download an article from a news website and think, right, how would I illustrate that article about, we've just discovered a new missing link between man and chimpanzees or something, or what would I do if I was illustrating something about the European Smarty Mountain or something? I don't know. It doesn't matter what it is, really. So try themes, try to apply your work to places that illustration is used and notice where it's used. It could be on a coffee cup. We used to do a project with the students when I noticed that 10 years ago, one of the coffee kiosks had some really good takeaway cups with great illustrations on, and their food, their little brownie packages and their sandwiches would all have some little funny words on it. So you think, well, that's good. That's quite a nice thing to commission because it's something unexpected that you might illustrate a sandwich pack or something. So I think you just have to have your eyes open and just be alert and collect and keep going through the drawing stages, whether that's physical drawing or digital drawing, or it could be collage. It really doesn't matter. And look at books, go to exhibitions under normal circumstances. Just feed your imagination. And then hopefully, without forcing it, you will start to migrate towards the things that you feel are expressing your ideas in a way that is authentic to you. And I think it's useful to look at other illustrators' work, and it might even be interesting to sort of have a go and think, right, how does that person make that line or make that mark or combine those elements? But I would say try your best not to ape someone in particular. I think it's not a very fruitful route to go down. You need to find your own voice and try and find what makes you different from somebody else, and that will appeal to somebody, to the client.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not an illustrator, but I can see the similarities with music and also with language learning, which is something I'm doing recently, and there is a very specific focus on the difference and importance of both input and output, and how you have to initially focus on inputs and that's how you said, like keep your eyes open and notice things, how other people are doing things, as many things as you can see, and then you gradually learn to use a bit of some of those elements in your own vocabulary. You take those and make it into active vocabulary. And I feel like people, especially with language learning, but I feel like the analogy holds. They expect to be able to speak, for example, without having practicing speaking, just because they know they can read a book, or they've got a good vocabulary they can understand. It doesn't mean that you can also speak. It's two different things. So in my opinion, it's two things that you've got to pursue at the same time. And so you learn you keep your eyes open, you learn something at the same time. As often as you can, you just create something, anything, and you think, okay, how can I take that and apply it to my what resonates with me, right? So I feel like, is that what you're talking about?
Totally. With the younger students, I used to use the analogy of like going shopping. It's be like, if you sit down to do something creative and you haven't been doing your shopping, you open the cupboard and you have one tin of chickpeas at the back on its own, and you can't make much with that. Whereas if you go out shopping regularly and buy all sorts of lovely ingredients, then when you go to your cupboard, there's any number of amazing things you might be able to make from what's in that cupboard. Exactly as you say, you might pick a bit of this, a bit of that, and turn it into something amazing. So you need to recognise that you have to have input to be able to output. I think that's probably just fundamental to so many creative practices, isn't it? Regardless whether it's writing or doing music or language, I just think it's just absolutely the core.
Yeah, part of the creative process. Okay.
Totally.
Going back to your story, where did we leave it?
So we got to getting some children's work and starting to do a lot of children's non-fiction. So then there were quite a number of years where I was doing predominantly children's non-fiction publishing, lots and lots of books. I think I've done over 200 books and magazines, lots of educational things. I did magazines for about art galleries. I did all sorts of things. But yes, I always used to say, because of this type of illustrator I was, I wasn't the sort of illustrator. I know an illustrator who is this sort of illustrator. He's the sort of illustrator where Somebody will come to him and go, we need you to create 3 amazingly beautiful illustrations. Oh, and we're going to give you all this money to do it. Yay! I'm the sort of illustrator that, frankly, it seems to be cheaper by the dozen. Yes, we've got 75 illustrations that we've done. Oh, and they're going to be done by 2 weeks. So, okay. And that's just, I think that's another thing that you start to learn is that the type of illustrator I am, I would never be able to say, well, I'm only doing 3 and I'm charging you all this money, because his clients would be entirely different to my clients. His clients would be fashion clients or a jeweler or a high spec brand. My clients were predominantly educational publishing, or even if they were mainstream publishers, they were on the non-fiction list. So you have to understand that difference, that yes, we all want to try and get the best deal, and we all want to try and get fair reward for the work we're doing. But you need to understand, if I'd stamped my foot and said, no, I'm not doing it unless it's twice that money, they just go somewhere else. So I had a lot of work, a lot of illustrations to do, and usually fairly tight deadlines. Plus, the other thing is that you if you are successful, you may not have the luxury of doing one job at a time, finishing that one there and then getting on with that. You may have 2, 3, 4 jobs all on the go at once. So that management is also a really important part of how you become an illustrator and how you manage your clients, because everybody's going to expect it on the day they want it, and it's up to you to try and achieve that, fulfill those deadlines and follow those schedules. So
I feel like we can just take a moment, because this might be an important thing to highlight. You've said how, and I completely agree, your clients, the kind of clients you have, are different from these other illustrator that works with fashion and other industries, different industries. And I feel like the kind of, and I'm not sure if this has been a choice that you've made being aware of it, just choosing the clients, or if you had those clients and you enjoyed it and you decided to stay there.
I think when I was starting out, I don't know that I think I fully understood that. And then when you get more experience, then you do understand the market a lot more. And, I see it a bit like football divisions. I think I've been a pretty good first division footballer, but then you open the door and see, oh, there's Premiership illustration. So actually, I would say that, yes, I have earned my living predominantly being a working illustrator for 31 years, which is quite an achievement. But I've done 200 books and no one's ever heard of me. And there's a lot of people like me. There's a lot of people who are working as illustrators. They're not high profile. They're not doing picture books or going to book fairs or book events and doing book signings. But it paid my mortgage. It put food on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to be, known all over the world. Actually, it's not even something I'd suggest, to be honest, to try.
But I think you need to understand that that there is that difference, that different client bands are going to have budgets, and you do your best within that to get the best budget for you. And if you're not satisfied or happy to work for that, then that may be your choice, or you may not have much of a choice and just think, well, I've just got to jump in and do it. We've got to put food on the table. But I think you just need to understand that is the case, that with some clients, there's never going to be a massive paycheck, but it might be regular work. So you need to weigh up yourself what is frankly more beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like the lesson here is just choose your clients. Be aware that specific kind of clients are going to get you in different ways, and so you might have different budgets, but also the amount of projects that you're going to do, as you said, and so many different things, and also the quality of your life, because some industries are just respect less the freelancers they work with, and so once again the lesson is just be clear about who you want to work with, in my opinion, and try and see the consequences of working with a specific industry or group of people.
Yes, but again, going back to when you're developing a portfolio or developing a style, is, if you're doing editorial work, you're probably not going to get a ton of money unless you're doing perhaps a cover of a very high-profile magazine. You'll get a better fee for that. If you're doing an internal illustration that is a quarter page, they're going to have a set fee for that. But if it's a weekly publication or even a monthly publication, you could get one a month. Like, I worked for the Radio Times, and I did a regular illustration for the Radio Times every week for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and that was really lovely. And I know an Illustrator, they had a column in there called What I Had for Dinner, and they would interview a different TV personality every week about what they have for dinner. And this illustrator, who lives nearby, he did it for about 22 years or something. He had to draw an awful lot of pasta, as you can imagine. Let's try and be creative with pasta every week. So, yes, there is an illustrator I know, and he says that before you decide to do a job, he says it's got to be bread or cred. So either it's a job you're not very keen on, but they're going to give you a load of money for, or it's a job that it's not great money, but you're really interested in it, or it might take your work somewhere else. So the bread or cred rule, I think, is not bad.
I've never heard of it. Yeah, fantastic.
So shall we spool on a bit further, or do you want to ask anything else about?
Let's go ahead with the story.
Okay, so there's this big period where I'm doing a lot of non-fiction work, quite regular work. The editorial is tailing off a bit at this point, so then I'm more or less pretty much a children's non-fiction illustrator. And I was quite lucky in that I ended up illustrating for a few series of books, which is always a really good thing if you can get that, because it means that there was one particular series of little toddler books I did that they did okay here, but for some reason the German market couldn't get enough of them. So they did one or two a year just for Germany, because the print run in Germany was large enough to justify the whole series. So I would do two of those a year, and then there was another series where I'd do one of those a year. So that's quite a nice position to be in, where you could think, well, okay, hopefully in the autumn I'm going to get another one. And I did quite a few books for Osborne Publishing, and they do a whole series of books on things to make and do that are really, really just run and run and run and run. So I did recycling things to make and do, football things to make and do, scary things to make and do, summer things to make and do. Yes, off they go. And then I also did their sticker dolly dressing books, which are always popular, peel-off stickers, put on figures. So again, we did round the world stickers, and we did my best friend stickers. So if you can get in with the publisher, if that's your market, having a regular series is a really nice thing to do, until the year arrives where January, right, getting ready, and just because of the market and just because they both get pulled at once. You're left looking into the distance and the tumbleweed blows across. So yes, it's such a catch-22 that when you're really busy, you should really be still promoting this and still be going out there, because things like the rug gets pulled and you haven't put the time in or had the time, because if the deadlines are that big, finding the time to sort of stop what you're doing for a live client and then sit down and try and think, who do I need to send stuff to? So, you know, in an ideal world, and we're not in an ideal world, you should constantly just be dripping out your work to new people. But it's easier said than done when you're in the middle of a maelstrom and you think, hell, I've got to draw 10 antelopes by Friday or whatever. So, yeah, so the series thing was quite good. And I did a couple of books with Nick Sharratt, who I mentioned earlier, who's a very hugely successful children's illustrator. We worked on a couple of books together where Nick did the cover and I did, they're called chapter books. They're a storybook with black and white illustrations inside, usually aimed at sort of 8 to 10-year-olds. So Nick would do the covers, I'd do the internal illustrations.
Could you put some numbers on those books? How much do you remember? How much do you get paid for those jobs?
Okay, I think. Oh God, goodness me.
And has it changed over time?
Well, I haven't actually. The last series I worked on was the Osborne books, and that is now. It could be 8 or 10 years ago because the BBC took over so completely. But I would like to suggest that quite possibly the fees are exactly the same as they were. I honestly can't remember. Would it be like 3,500 for a book, and it had 250 illustrations in?
Okay.
And yeah, so in real terms, quite a lot of illustration fees I don't think have shifted. They're certainly not keeping match with inflation, is my understanding. That's what I've heard from other illustrators.
And how much do you take for you to illustrate 250 illustrations?
So that's it, 3,500. I mean, how much time did you say?
Yeah, how much time?
Oh, goodness. I think the schedule for those books were about 3 months, but I'm not working on that because I was teaching part-time at the same time, maybe 1 day a week. So, yeah, so it could be 3 days a week or something. But you're not, but this is the thing that is a big difference between illustration and design is that designers quite often have a day rate. They would charge a day rate to do work. And illustrators almost always charge by the job. So depending on your working style or your working technique, when you're quoting for a job and you're trying to discuss things, you're not basing it on how much time it takes you. That's not what you're quoting for. When you quote for a job, you are quoting for the usage. You're quoting for the. So that means, is it going to be just a book, or is it going to be a book, a website, a T-shirt, you know, blah blah, stage show? So usage. Second thing you are quoting for is the territory. Is it going to be a book only printed in the UK, or is it going to be a book and it's going to be printed worldwide? The third thing you're quoting for is duration. So is it just for 5 years? Is it in perpetuity? So all those things need to be factored in when you're quoting for a fee for any illustration job. And those are the questions you need to ask a client. So where's it being used? Sorry, how's it being used? Where's it being used? How long is it being used? And that is going to be part of your quote. If you, and you know, I used to sort of say to students, because they'd say, oh, but my work takes longer to do than her work does. Well, if you happen to have a very quick work style, and say you sat down and did an Uber in 2 hours and it's all done, if that image was going to be used by Coca-Cola, you wouldn't expect just to charge them your 2 hours worth of work. You're going to charge Coca-Cola because that's going to be put on bus shelters and billboards and on the side of lorries. So that's what you're using to make a quote for a job.
Yeah, I feel like all those things you just said are just to figure out, or the best way in case of illustrators to figure out how much is my work worth for them. And based on that, you can actually take a chunk of that in a way.
But also, as we've been talking about publishing, if you do picture book work, you are very likely to have a royalty fee. If you do non-fiction work, you are almost completely likely never to have a royalty fee. So picture book work pays a royalty to the author and to the illustrator. And if you're lucky enough to write and illustrate your own books, you get a double lot of royalty. If you're a non-fiction illustrator, there's almost never any royalty. So that's another thing to factor in, because if you are a picture book illustrator, there could be a strong possibility that you will get an advance fee. And once that's worked through against sales, you then go into the royalty area. And you can obviously continue to get royalties every year, as long as the book is in production. So that's great.
As a non-fiction illustrator, you've never seen royalties from your work?
Well, irony of ironies is the next bit of the story was having done a couple of books alongside Nick, we did a book together, which was this absolutely fantastic series with a great team, a lovely designer, brilliant paper engineer. It was a superb pop-up book. And it was absolutely amazing. It was great. And it was one of the only books I've ever had a royalty on. And how exciting was that? Until, would it have been 2008? Can't quite remember. It might have been previous crash. I've been through 3 crashes. Publisher went under. So I lost quite a bit of money on it. Yeah, so it was the only one that I nearly got some money on, and then I didn't. So yes, but then there is a little payoff at the end of that, which is the book was absolutely amazing, and then it was produced, and then I think it lapsed. So then another publisher a few years later, suddenly out of the ashes, this little phoenix arose. And another publisher produced it, but I didn't have a royalty deal with them. I only had a royalty deal with the first publisher. And I got contacted by Nick, who I've worked on it with, and the designer, Sally, and we got in touch. They said, that book is up for an award. And I went, what? It's like, really? So we were up for a Royal Society Award they had a short list of books that promotes scientific subjects to children. And there was a short list of 6, and our book was on the list. So we got to go to the awards ceremony in London at the Royal Society, and we didn't win, but I think, yes, we did get prize money for being shortlisted. So between the team of 5 of us, I got £200. There you go.
Royalties.
So it was like the book that desperately failed gave me a little payoff somewhere down the line. Nowhere near as much as I was owed, but it was just irony of ironies. So yes, you don't tend to get royalties in non-fiction publishing, unfortunately. So yes, but yes, who could have known that the publisher? I think if I recollect rightly, it was the 2008 crash, and quite a lot of businesses had got caught out then. So yes. So then Nick, who has been a little guardian angel in my life in a way. So then Nick, who is known for working on the Jacqueline Wilson books, the Tracy Beaker books, hugely successful, massive TV series. They ran and ran. In 2012, Nick was on sabbatical, and they wanted to reboot the TV series, because it was based around this girl brought up in a children's home, and the actress playing her, that she was actually getting sort of older, and the actress wanted to leave, and they wanted to refresh the series. So it changed from being called Tracy Beaker or Tracy Beaker Returns, because Tracy had left, and it was called The Dumping Ground. And The Dumping Ground is what she used to refer to the children's home that she was brought up in. And in 2012, Nick was going to take a sabbatical. So it's a live action TV series with live actors and actresses, but it has 3 short animated inserts in each episode of about 10 to 15 seconds each. And they were Nick's drawings animated that were slotted into the live action. So in 2012, when Nick was away, we got in touch and said me and the producer and I are trying to find somebody to do my drawings. And so anyway, fast forward, and I was asked to submit samples, and someone else was asked to submit samples, and I got the gig. So I then had to learn sort of Nick's style. Our work is...
Oh, you had to replicate it.
Yes, but I would say it wasn't such a huge leap in that his and my work, because we have worked on something together, I'd say we were sort of adjacent to each other. But I did have to learn. I mean, one good thing about working digitally is Nick could give me his digital palettes. He could tell me what settings he used, Photoshop. So I had to learn. It was sort of learning on the job, really. I had to do the drawings that were then animated for the TV series. So that started in 2012. And basically, since that time until 2018, Nick, it was me doing the illustrations. And
how was it working in the television industry?
Very interesting, because I think it was a very particular job because it had that mix of live action plus animation, which is quite unusual. So the first year I did it, I had to go up and have meetings with the producer, the exec producer, the animation company, the storyboard artist, all of that. But then every year I worked on it. But for the first 3 years, they had different producers. So actually, when the next series came round, I had to tell them what the process was, because it had such peculiar constraints, which was, if you imagine I might be drawing a character that's going to be in the series. So I had to liaise, it all had to happen in sequence. So you had the script, then the storyboard artist would work from the script, and I'd get the storyboards. And then when they were signed off by the producer, then I would know that I would have to draw these 6 characters, and I'd have to draw a prison van, and I'd have to draw a giant cake or whatever it was. So I had to then liaise with the wardrobe, head of makeup, because they would have to email me photographs, reference photographs. If there were locations, I had to get the location shots. So even though the style is fairly reductive and fairly simple, you have to be able to take on all that information to reduce it down so that it's instantly recognisable on screen, but that's that character having that experience. So you had to really get your ducks in a row with that. Plus, we were following the shooting script. So there was a deadline every week. You had to do 30 illustrations, and initially it was 13 half-hour episodes for television, and it was a hugely successful series. It's absolutely terrific. The scripts were brilliant, the actors were brilliant. But it kept growing and growing. So it went from 13 half-hour episodes, next year 20, plus a Christmas special. Next year, 24 episodes. So I would start it around May, June, and I sometimes wouldn't finish till the following January. It was really, it was a marathon, not a sprint. And in the end, I had another, because it got so big, I had another illustrator who would do all the background work and I would do all the character work. So we divided it between us. And it's such a great series, but it was terrifically hard work, and everybody that worked on it, because we used to go around the sets and see the kids and coming into their lunch and say hello. But it was such a lot of work, and it really, really was setting the alarm at 5:30 in the morning and sitting down at 5:45 and sitting here in a semi-darkened room and then getting up at 7 o'clock to go and eat something and then doing it all again the next day. So this is the thing about when you're freelance, is the feast or famine. You cannot always regulate it completely. You cannot say, I'm going to work 5 days and have 2 days off. It might, if you're up against it and you need to do the job, just got to knuckle down and get on with it.
Yeah.
So it was great. Yes, but I did seven whole years, and it was continuing beyond. And I thought long and hard and made a decision, which was I felt I needed to walk away from it, which was either the wisest thing or the stupidest thing I've ever done.
This was 2012 till 2018.
Yeah, so I did the last series in 2018, and I'd already told my workmate in 2017, look, I'm going to do one more year, and then I think I'm going to walk away from it. So I gave him a year's notice to look for something else. And the reason is, I think when you do a job like I do, people who aren't illustrators or don't have creative professions, I think they have a slightly rosy tinted view. They're like, oh my God, I'd love to do what you, oh my God, I'd love to do that. Yeah, it's great. I am very lucky. I sit in the space I love, in the house I love, and I pick up a pen or I pick up a pencil and I draw, and I make money out of it. But it is a job. Don't pretend otherwise. You have to be organised and disciplined, and you cannot just decide, oh, well, yeah, well, someone else will do it. Because there's no someone else, it's you. If you don't do it, no one does it. So I think, and I also think that people that don't have a creative job imagine that every day you wake up and you're going to be so fulfilled creatively, you're going to walk away thinking, wow, that was great. And I'm not demeaning the work I did for that job, because I think we both fulfilled the brief, we did a good job, the client was happy, we were happy, but I felt like I was going round the block, the same block again and again. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel creatively that it was moving me anywhere, moving me forward. And I think hopefully as a creative person, you perhaps should keep growing and keep moving. Yeah. And so I just thought either I carry on doing it for the next few years and accept that this is the gig, or I take an active step to change something about it and try to reconnect with that original spark, that real excitement about being creative. So that's why I chose, it was my decision, and they very kindly tried to persuade me otherwise, but I was at a point in having been illustrating for 30 years, just about, I was more or less thinking, well, either you just go, that's the gig, just get your head down, or there could still be time in my career to find something else, or to go into a slightly different area, or find something creative that makes me want to really get up in the morning and sit at the desk. So that was where I was creatively with my own work, and felt that it was time to address that in some way.
And okay, so how did it go? This was 3 years ago.
Well, I then in 2019, I had some family issues that meant I didn't really get much done. I had some family stuff that needed doing. So really, it was the end of 2019 into 2020. And I just thought, if I was a student and I was stuck, what would I tell a student to do? What would I tell that student? How to unlock something? And what I would tell them to do is just start drawing again. Just don't think. I think because when you've been focused on clients and deadlines and delivering artwork, every time you pick up a pen, you're thinking, oh, is this a book cover, or is this that? and actually just reconnecting with the joy of drawing stuff that catches your eye. So I'd had this big sketchbook sitting there for probably a year, looking at me, going, draw something in me. And it was genuinely like January, February last year, pre-COVID, that I just got up every day and I got the sketchbook out and I went through loads and loads of reference photos of amazing things I'd seen in art galleries, because I love ethnographic collections or outsider art or archaeological things. And I've taken loads of amazing photos over the years on holiday in different galleries. And I went through all these photographs and just thought, oh, there's loads of horses. I'll draw loads of these prehistoric horses. And then there's a little horse that was made in ancient Cyprus out of terracotta, and I'll draw this one. And then went on to bulls, and I just started drawing animals. So it was just really lovely just to reconnect with just creating something, looking at it, and having the pleasure of being allowing yourself to draw.
So did you not have any idea at all about what you wanted to do when you left your previous job? You knew it wasn't working for you anymore, but
yes, it was very difficult because I think it's always much easier to run towards something, thinking that's what I want to get to. But I was doing the opposite, which was I was trying to run away from something, but I didn't quite know where I was going. So that was the hardest thing. I think it's much, much easier to aim for something, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the confusion of not knowing where you're going it's very scary often.
Yeah, and I did feel like I had just put my foot over the edge of the crevasse and stepped off. And I do have to counter this by saying I have been working for more than 10 years, an average of 1 day a week, with another illustrator at another studio as a PA. So but the fact that I walked away from the BBC meant my income halved straight away. But I thought, if I'm careful and don't go crazy, I can get by. And the decision was that I wanted to try and make that space to discover what I wanted to do. So really, I started off just drawing and painting again, and then starting having ideas and keeping a notebook again, and starting doing doodles and coming up with little book ideas of my own that were incorporating a number of things that interested me about travel or about language, and combining those. So I started then later in the year, maybe around this time last year, that's when I started working on sort of book ideas again. And also I bought myself an iPad, because one of the good things that came from the last teaching job I had, which was Winchester School of Art from 2019 to 2020, I hadn't taught for quite a number of years. And again, that had moved on hugely. There weren't drawing tablets, there wasn't Procreate, there wasn't iPencils. So it was really, for me, I learned from the students. I could see what they could do with it. And I was really excited, interested how they used it and what amazing results they got. So I started thinking in the autumn last year, I think I need to try and learn to draw digitally, because even when my output is digital, which it had been since 2000, I would either draw a line, physical line, on paper, scan it in, colour it up in Photoshop, or I would do a quick drawing and then use Illustrator, the vector application, to create very graphic flat work. But I was literally plot drawing with a mouse. People couldn't understand. They said, it's like drawing with a bar of soap. So I thought, well, I'll get an iPad and I'll see how I get on with the Apple Pencil. And I love it. It's great. And I can now bring in more of the hand-drawn element with the quite graphic element. So again, It's like given my work a fresher look, a slightly more contemporary look. I think it looks so. Yes, it's just allowed me to sort of refresh my folio. And in fact, even though I say I've done 200 books and magazines, I actually just stripped out my website and took out the things that I thought I don't think I want to do that work anymore. As I said earlier, it's your shop front. So if you've got apples and pears in the window, people are going to come and ask you for apples and pears, aren't they? And I decided I didn't want to sell apples and pears anymore. I want to sell pineapples.
Exotic.
So it's work in progress, but the thing that has happened that I haven't felt for quite a few years is I just get up and I can't wait to sit down and get going again. And I think as creative people, surely that's got to be, your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't say I've quite got to the other side of the riverbank yet. It's very mixed metaphors. I've jumped off this side. I'm frantically swimming across the river. Hopefully there'll be an island before too long. I'm pushing out there. I've been sending samples to agents. I've got a whole book idea I want to try and see if anyone's interested in. And I've been making things like 3D things, and that might not seem like illustration, but I think I think I've just found that spark again. If that isn't there, you've got to ask why you're doing it and not working in the supermarket.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's been incredibly brave, and I don't know how many people would have done that, left a job like that, and just let's reinvent myself. So kudos for that, for sure.
Well, thank you. But yes, I can't say I've suddenly got the answer to life, the universe, and everything. But yeah, I think it's very interesting, the whole thing about what spurs you to get up, and what if no one's asking you to do it, what makes you do it. And I know, obviously, inevitably, I know a lot of illustrators, I know a lot of artists, and I think the people I see that do still have that urge, have that need to make a mark, make a painting, make a thing, I think it's innate. We just want to go and do it. Yeah.
And so are you currently in the process of still trying to understand where you want to go, or have you defined it and then are you now trying to?
I think I've got a couple of new ways of working, because when I used the previous work, I had two ways of working. That one was Illustrator, one was Photoshop, and they were very much sort of educationally or non-fictional style. So I think I'm hoping that the things I've been doing lately might appeal across the board a bit more and be perhaps also a bit more of a design bias, because I think I have done a little bit of design as well as illustration, and I can see that that is, I think I have a sense of design in my work. I think I haven't landed on one way, but I have a feeling that possibly that won't be me. I think I feel happier when I'm dabbling in a bit of this and a bit of that. But the other thing is, which is obviously a huge change, is social media and Instagram and things like that, which I've had to learn. I had to learn that because it didn't exist 10 years ago. Maybe it did, but it wasn't anywhere near as prevalent as it is now. And it's very interesting. The other illustrator I work with, he's phenomenally successful and has a huge following on Instagram. And it's very interesting learning from him and understanding the things that work and how you promote yourself. So I can't say it comes terribly naturally to me, but I do see that it is pretty much a necessary tool now as a way of exposure and getting your work out there and getting people to see it.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree on that, actually.
Okay.
This is something we have talked about with previous guests. on the show as well, there is certainly a place for social media, and when you do it for some time, you can have great opportunities. You can see great opportunities that come from that place. But well, first of all, it can take quite a long time for it to actually bring something into your life. But also, social media and promotion are very important when you are, for example, selling a product. So if you need to reach a huge amount of people, then yes, you do need to promote yourself. You need to do like the proper marketing stuff. But what you can do as a freelancer is the approach of just picking up the phone or writing an email. That most of the times can be enough. It's not the only way by any means, but and so if you get creative, once again there is no one road. If you get creative, if you over promote yourself, or just also mix things, you can get to places. But I wouldn't say, in my opinion, that it's mandatory. And so it's nice that you're trying to figure out whether that is for you or not, or trying to figure out how it's working. But it was interesting to me that through social media and agents, you're kind of trying to change things from how you used to do things. And I'm curious, what have you tried so far, and what kind of response have you seen that has made you think, I need to do something differently?
You mean in the way I approach agents or clients, or how I use Instagram, or both? Or?
No, I mean in the ways you make things happen. So you get clients and
Yes. Well, I think that's so difficult because I've done a lot of research, say for the literary agents, the illustration agents, and a lot of publishers. And this book idea I mentioned that I had, I went through and spent a couple of days online, because what you used to do was you would go and sit in a bookshop all day and you'd write down the titles. Because what you need to do is you need to target people. There's no point with me sending this book idea to a publisher who don't have anything else on their list that look like what I'm doing or cover those subjects. Again, it's the horses for courses, because you will be wasting your time, because they will never take something like that. So you need to target specific clients and publishers who are likely that you are going to fit in their stable. So anyway, I did that. I found a lot of publishers, and then when you look, of course, now you can look online. They mostly have submission criteria, how you submit your samples or your ideas, and but many of them just say a flat, we do not accept any unsolicited material, full stop. So that, I think, is a big difference to what it used to be, because you used to be able to stick some things in an envelope and at least post it to somebody, as publishers. That's the thing that I've found that's the gatekeeper now, is that many publishers are not seeing any ideas or any illustration samples that are not coming by an agent, a literary agent or an illustration agent. So I think that's made the job a bit tougher to get. And also, without being any way disrespectful, is I haven't just left college 2 weeks ago. It's like saying I am an experienced illustrator. I have got 30 years experience. I do understand. So what I've done is I have tried to target. I think I've sent out to 6 literary agents and 3 or 4 illustration agents at the moment in the last month, and a little bit earlier. And at the moment, there's been a couple of them have given me a polite thank you very much, very interesting work, but you're not for us. But many of them many of the publishers and agents say it can take up to 12 weeks, and we may not acknowledge that we've received it. So basically, don't badger us. Just so you sort of cast your seed out into the wind, and you've got to hope that maybe a sprout comes up somewhere. So I haven't cracked it yet. I'm trying what I think I need to try. I'm thinking maybe, and yes, what I'm submitting is digital samples. So you're submitting a digital portfolio. And again, each publisher or each agent is giving you very specific criteria, technical criteria. Right, we want to see no more than 6 things. We want to see 12 things. We want files that are no bigger than 3 megabytes. So you have to do your homework and get it correct. So I've still got more to try, and I need to do that, but my senses are just quite difficult still to get in there in the first place. If I had an answer, I don't have the absolute answer on this one. Maybe I'm thinking maybe trying something completely different in terms of maybe doing a physical thing. I don't know, because years and years ago, when you used to send out postcards of printed samples, again, you'd send loads out and you'd hope that someone would respond. And then one year, this is years ago, you used to get these little plastic key rings that you could clip open and put a photograph in and clip them closed again with a loop for your key. So one year I put a little mini illustration in these key rings, and I think I made 30, and I made a cutout key of card and attached it to it. So, and I sent that to a number of publishers, and I think I got 2 jobs straight back from that. So it's how A, how you get in the room, and B, how you stand out from the crowd.
Absolutely.
That's going to be the same for whoever it is, unless your agent is, and then the agent is doing that legwork for you, aren't they? Yes, I think that's the toughest thing. You just kind of want the chance, don't you, to just say, ta-da, please have a look. So yes, can't give you any more total solutions on that one, I don't think.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's still early. You don't know yet, right? You're still waiting to see if something happens, and you'll probably be doing something else as well, just moving things around. Yes,
and there's things like, I know, obviously these days everybody has a website, so again I just go in and I check, is everything on there, what I want on there, is there anything I don't want to do anymore, and refresh it, pull it off. And also I think the other thing is, which a lot of illustrators are doing, is we're all shopkeepers now, aren't we? We've all got, buy our prints, buy our greetings cards. So last week, yes, my online shop is open. The little original artworks that I've been making. So I think, in a way, I think it's fantastic to think, who knew 10 years ago I could sit here myself and build my own website, and then I can put a little shop on it, and then I can attach a payment partner, and hey presto, someone can come and buy something directly from me. And here I am in my studio, and I wrap it all up nicely, and off it goes. So I think that is fantastic. But I think the onus is much more on the illustrator or the artist or the creative person to control that and be actively involved in it. I think there's more things that come under our umbrella of how we do our job now than there ever were 30 years ago. And I feel, for me, I found that, again, exciting and rewarding because, you know, I used a template website, but I've built my website. I've learned how to add the shop bit on, learned how to do this, and I've made little stock frame animations for Instagram to promote the things I'm selling. And it's like, oh, how do I do that? And the thing that is amazing is it gets to a point, gets stuck. And then, of course, thanks to YouTube or whoever else it is, you go, oh, don't know how to do that. And hey presto, you watch a 2-minute video, and then before you know it, you spend a day, and I've made a stock frame animation and put a soundtrack on it, and it's not bad. And I think that's amazing to think. I think you still need to keep learning stuff. So for me, that's enriching. That's really rewarding. That I may not be as successful an illustrator as I was, but I'm totally re-energized about it and feel excited about what might happen, and just the actual acquisition of new skill and new technique. I think it's really a great thing for everybody to get creative, just to keep. It's that feeding and looking thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yes.
So have we reached the present moment?
We're right bang up to date. Yes, the shop was launched last Tuesday, so a week ago. The shop was launched on the Instagram, and I will just say one thing on the plus side of Instagram, and I'm only paddling in the shallow waters of it compared with most people. But I think there are sometimes opportunities that come through it. So, for example, earlier in the spring, an agent that I know down in Brighton, she had an open competition to submit artwork, and she had over 600 entries for like a handful. She has her own artist. It was a colouring in book. It was a charity thing to raise money for Sea Change Project to protect kelp forests. All the profit was going to that. It was an amazing thing. And she did this colouring book called Caring Colouring. It was based on sea creatures and things like that. And she put out an open invitation for a handful of extra artists to go in, and was inundated. But everybody that submitted went on her stories and her feed. Well, lucky me, I got in the book. And I think that is out of 600, I feel really thrilled that happened. And I'm supporting the project, and something that I'm sure we all feel strongly about is that we've got to start doing our bit for the environment. So I would say that if I hadn't been on Instagram, I wouldn't have had the chance to put in that. And also, we never know who else might see that, who else might also. So I think you sometimes have to take these opportunities because it's something interesting to do, or it might move the work into another area.
Yeah. I just want to say the thing I've said before didn't mean that I think like Instagram is a bad strategy or that you shouldn't be doing it at all. It's just I have very maybe particular ideas on how that tool should be used, and I feel like I've talked about vanity metrics in another episode, which are like likes and followers, and people that approach social media might focus on the wrong things. And yes. So that was just a small parenthesis of me saying you don't need to chase the huge numbers, right?
No, I don't feel that at all. The thing that I have found, which I'm sure is very common to many people, is most of the people I follow, well, a significant number of the people I follow and follow me are people that I either have a direct connection or they're friends of friends or they're the wider art community. And it's, the nice side effects like reconnecting with illustrators and artists that I was at college with 30 years ago, seeing what they're doing. And I do feel that's very positive and very nurturing that people are sharing that. And so, no, I sure as hell I'm not chasing those big numbers. I haven't got them. But I do feel that sometimes little opportunities come along that you can't always foresee, and that they're nice when they pop up and you can take part in them and be involved in things. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes. But,
Okay, so if
yes.
we've reached the end, sorry, were you saying something?
Oh, I was just going to say, was there any of the sort of the core things that we've neglected to talk about that you really wanted to cover about?
Oh no, if we reach the end, I feel like it's been a comprehensive story.
Okay.
So
Without,
maybe
we haven't got the ending yet, though, have we?
no, we haven't. Do we have an ending that you, or are we just leaving it to?
It's a cliffhanger. You have to come back for series 2.
What's the next episode with Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we go, first of all, I'll ask you to just go through your previous experiences and think of what do you think are the biggest lessons that you have learned from your experiences and that you think people who might be listening should be learning.
I think it's important that you try to find an authentic way of working, a style of voice that is authentic to you. And I think you're only going to do that to reiterate what we were both saying about by feeding that. So try to allow that to develop naturally and keep feeding it. Keep feeding it. Keep going and doing your big weekly shop and stocking the cupboard up so you've got loads of lovely ingredients to go to. I think you need to put time and a bit of effort in researching. So you need to research and find out where illustration is being used and try to understand where you might fit within that and who your work might be most suitable for. And I think we didn't really talk about this, but I think in the day-to-day thing, you need to be businesslike about this. This is a job. This is not the same as just picking up a pencil on a weekend and it's your hobby. I think you need to treat it like you would any job. And I think it's one of the hardest because you have to be the complete business person. You have to be the creative person, marketing, the publicity, the accounts, and you also hopefully are going to keep developing. And some of those jobs, if you're not confident doing them, you can get a bookkeeper, you can get an accountant. You don't have to do that, but I think you need to understand that it's a hugely rewarding job and a hugely satisfying thing to do, but it is a job, and have no illusions about what it takes to succeed in it. So I just wish everybody well if they want to do it. My goodness, go for it.
All right, and finally, if people do want to get in touch with you, whether to work with you, to see your latest work, or to ask some advice if they are illustrators, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, on my website, which is Jomo, Jomo, jomo.co.uk, there is a submission form to contact me directly, or I am on Instagram at Jomo_Ho. Jomo_Ho. And again, you can direct message me there if you want to have a chat or ask me about anything.
Fantastic. All right, Joe, thank you so much again for coming. I'll talk to you soon.
Oh, thank you for asking me. It's been great. Bye.
All right, it's done. Thanks for watching. Once again, you'll be able to find all of the timestamps and resources in the link in the description down below. And if you're a struggling freelancer, just go and check out my free guide to full-time freelancing. It might help. I think it will. And other than that, the usual stuff. If you liked the video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to hear more stories like these and more advice on making a living doing what you love, just subscribe to the channel because there's more coming. Hit the bell, all that stuff. You know what to do. See ya.